And we're back. Not my normal, joyous, excited, and we're back.
You're a little
Because,
flat. A little flat.
yeah, I think everyone's kind of flat right now. I think it's kind of a shitty time. It goes without saying, 2020 is the worst year ever. Um, so normally we
I
open
mean,
the
I think
show up
on
and we
record.
talk about stupid stuff like Takashi 69 and every update with him. And there's not even any news on that front. There's hardly any headlines. There's very few albums coming out this week. A lot of people have delayed new music. Um, the world is busy right now observing what's going on in the streets and protesting. We still have a virus outbreak in the world. It's a very shitty time. There's no real good news to go over. So we're going to address this situation head on. There's nothing out headline wise, anything that doesn't involve the protests and more police brutality. We usually try to make this show an escape for you and for us from our normal work week, our regular lives, our chores, our responsibilities, the bullshit that goes on in the world that we can't control. And this is supposed to be like tuning in to watch cable TV. This is supposed to be your outlet to get informed on the music you love, to get away from the bullshit and to talk and be heard. We always try to voice the opinions of those who write in and talk to us. And I take pride in that. I like that we have people that give a shit about us. We give a shit about you, and we want to say what you're thinking. Um, right now, there is no escaping the injustices that are going on in our country. There's no way around it. There's no ignoring it like we've tried to do when it comes to the coronavirus. We try to really not bring up COVID because it sucks so bad and it's ruined my job personally. Um, it's it's put it's set Bryan back a bit. It's screwed up everyone's plans for the year. If you had plans to do anything for the summer, to attend any sort of mass gathering, it's gone down the drain. We try not to bring that up because it's a constant bummer. And so COVID is something that we can't ignore on the show at least, but there's no way that we can ignore what just happened in the past week and a half, 2 weeks. And so we're going to talk about it. I normally have a strict no politics rule on this show. If you like politics, if you like to have those big open-ended discussions, that's Bryan's alley. That's the common chaos thing. That's right up his avenue. What's going on right now is not a political issue. It is a human rights issue. It's not about who's right and who's wrong because there's facts and we know what's right and what's wrong. Being ignorant will not be tolerated in 2020. Being racist will not be tolerated in 2020. I wish a lot more people felt that way, but they don't. I Hate the Scene supports Black Lives Matter. We condemn police brutality. I want that to be loud and clear, clear as the night sky. We joked around saying fuck 12 before. It's hard for me to keep my emotions in check and say anything respectful towards police right now. I'm sure their jobs are difficult, but we're not seeing a whole lot of good cop videos. I saw a video today of the National Guard doing a Macarena at a protest, and while I'm glad they're not shooting rubber bullets and injuring people, the fuck does the Macarena have to do with anything? How is that helping anybody? That's almost like making a joke out of all this. Um, Tonight, we're going to discuss our views and opinions like you've never heard before. We're usually off in the weeds on some bullshit about music and entertainment, things that quote unquote don't matter. They matter to us, the little things that we like to get wrapped up in. And now there are much more important issues to discuss, and we have to do that as podcasters, as influencers, as live streamers, as people with any sort of reach. We are obligated to discuss these issues. We flirted with the idea of having a couple different guests on, someone that could bring more perspective than just two white guys talking about BLM.
Yeah. Right.
It honestly, it wouldn't be right to have someone come on and have to prepare a statement and really planning it like we didn't ever planned on doing this episode. The recent events forced our hand on this. We have to discuss these things, and it's something that, after thinking it over and trying to control my emotions, it's something that I think this is the right move. I think this is something we have to do. We couldn't ignore what's going on around us like we have with COVID. So we're gonna hit this one head on. I am going to hand over the floor to Bryan. When you are done, say one of our code words so I do not interrupt you. I just want to know what you think and how you're feeling since we witnessed the video of George Floyd being murdered and there were protests and riots. How do you feel?
First of all, beautiful intro, man. I feel like for a show not being serious, you nailed that. So good.
It's definitely out of my element. I'm usually the guy to crack jokes and be stupid, and I can't do that tonight.
And hey, it's if anything, we are two white guys talking about an issue that probably don't really know what we're talking about to a degree. But I think what we do know is we do know what at least humanity and like a respect for human life and the human element is, right? And the respect for people, and especially people that are supposed to be our brothers and our sisters, right? With and not just to be patriotic, but hey, yeah, the U.S. has been through some turbulent times in the past, and we always seem to come together when it matters, right? And I think that this is one of those times, and it's not an easy thing to discuss. It's not an easy thing to solve, obviously. It's it is a political issue. I know you said that it isn't, but our discussion of the matter right now isn't, no, but it is, right? And it's so much deeper. It's so many issues at play and at hand right now, and it's not going to be a easy fix. It's not going to be something that is just glossed over. You and me were working together, I believe, Sunday night, and when fucking Minneapolis burned down, right? And we were kind of watching it secondhand through Facebook, mind you. And it was, we both were like, wow, our jaws were on the ground. We were watching it, kind of taking it in, and it hasn't stopped since, in the sense that momentum and that feeling. And I think for where we come from, music, arts, entertainment, those are things that don't exist unless there is equality and representation from every type of culture, society that there can be. And for us to not address that, and to not, at least draw the line where we stand morally and what we expect, when we're asked how we feel on it, right? And it's something that I think it's not something to ignore anymore, and that's why we're talking about it, right? It's not something that is to just pass by. This is a very serious issue. It's an issue that has existed for a very long time, and it's just time that it changes. That's all that needs to happen. Change needs to happen, and it's going to come. And it's to both degrees on both sides, right? You want what's best for everybody, and in this time, it's just important to, I think, focus on how to make things better. And I'm a fan of listening. I'm a fan of just being an advocate of, where can people help? How can they help? How can they, make a voice a little bit louder? How can they get a message out a little bit farther? And I think that with our platforms, if anything, we want to be able to at least represent that voice, right? On my end, yeah, hey, I do go a little bit deeper. I am going to be taking a little bit more of a deeper approach to this when it comes to my feelings and my emotions on it and how it's affected me. But if you're not looking at this and going, man, things have to change, then I think you're really looking at life through a tainted lens. And I hope you go to fucking lens crafters. I hope that you fucking go and get that prescription fixed and really understand what's going on and just do what you can to make change. you know, whether it be in your small community, within your friends, within your network, within your audience, whatever it may be. And yeah, you know, you said where we stand, you know, against police brutality. We support Black Lives Matter. We do support all lives. And I know that's an argument, but none of that matters unless this movement matters. And I think that that's the message a lot of people are missing. And, you know, there's a reason we're taking that stance. And there's a reason that to that same degree, you have to stop that other part, that brutality part. That is something that also needs to stop and needs to be corrected. And they're both very apparent, and you just, yeah, you hope it changes. And I believe it is, man, you know, and it's going to be shows like this. It's going to be shows this, again, we watched Minneapolis burn through Facebook. It's going to be the personal aspect of people and their brands and their messages and their voices that are going to bring about this change and bring about any type of change, really, whether it be this, whether it be change towards science, towards COVID, towards other natural things that happen, disasters, what have you. Any idea, anything is going to go through communication and through information and the sharing of that and being able to connect with people and connect with mass amounts of people, which is also crazy because you see journalism taking a fucking crazy hit in all of this, right? And that's another weird perspective, but you know, it's just a mess, man. It's a mess, and you know, we just got to work through it. And I think right now everybody just needs to listen and pay attention. Jambalaya.
I don't think that was the right code word, but
it wasn't. But
when I saw the video of George Floyd being murdered, I was saddened. I was angry. I wasn't confused. I kind of wish I was, but we've seen this before. It's become almost a monthly occurrence. We've seen yet another unarmed black person murdered by the police. I don't think you can phrase that any other way. George Floyd was murdered by the Minneapolis Police Department. I watched as citizens pleaded with him to remove his knee from the back of this man's neck. The officer, Derek Chauvin, I believe is his name, it seemed like he didn't want to listen to anyone tell him what to do. It seemed like he felt he was in the right, or that maybe he couldn't appear to be wrong because he's an officer of the law. I feel like he ignored the pleas. He ignored George Floyd's pleas that he couldn't breathe. He didn't seem concerned at all for his safety. I don't understand why you couldn't. The man went unconscious and you couldn't remove your knee from the back of his neck. That tells me that you're not trying to subdue the man. You're trying to put him out. You're trying to kill him for good. I feel like those sentiments that Officer Chauvin showed is the same sentiments that officers give all possible suspects. That the cop is right, you are wrong. You're either guilty or suspicious, and we're going to figure out something to pin on you. I wish I didn't feel that way, but it's hard not to when you see these things play out through the media. And I'm the first to tell you the media lies. The media pushes agendas. I think media now is more biased than it's ever been. There's always been a slight bias because somebody at the top of every media company, they lean left or right in one way or the other. So there's going to be some biasm. It's worse now than it has ever been. We have fake news. We have things that come out to make you believe something without any sort of proof. And it works. The bottom line with George Floyd is that there's no excuse for this to happen. There's no excuse. There's no justification that a man who allegedly used a fake $20 bill and allegedly had drugs in his system has to be murdered. Non-violent offender, unarmed. You put him out, he was unconscious, and you didn't remove the knee from his neck. When the other officers arrived, there was no call to an EMT. There was no There was no fuck given for his safety or his well-being. They scooped him up like trash,
No
put him
CPR.
on a gurney, and no CPR, and they just took him away. They just hauled him off like a trash bag, and it's awful that it happens so much. There's no excuse for that. There's no excuse for the murder of Ahmed Aubrey that we've seen. Two a father and son duo gun him down because of what they thought he was or what they thought he was doing. Or maybe it was just because he's black, because the more and more facts come out, it seems that they really just didn't like black people in their neighborhood.
Did you
Um,
see the trial that they did yesterday?
I saw news come out that said that they ran him over with the truck and called him the N-word, and I can't handle much more of this news. I feel
Mm.
obligated to keep up with it, but in dealing with my own depression, this shit has not done me any good. Um, I'm sick of it. I know the black community is obviously sick of it. All people are sick of this. How many times is an entire group of people, an entire race, an entire culture supposed to take injustice after injustice? Because that's why we have riots right now. Because these people that feel wronged, whether you're black or you're just upset about this and you go and you protest, they feel so voiceless and so helpless that they resort to violence and burning and destroying their own city. Now, I know some people, look, we can all agree that looting a small business hurts a lot more than just the corporations that we perceive to be the enemies. Looting a Target is a hell of a lot different than looting a mom and pop liquor store. Target's a corporation based in Minneapolis. I know a lot of people felt one way or the other about them.
That was a message. There's a reason there, I think.
There definitely was. The thing that we also are not seeing or paying attention to is that they burned down their Target. They don't have a Target to go to. They have to now drive like 30 minutes away, and it's inconvenient for everybody. And I know a lot of people don't support the protests, don't support the riots, don't support looting. Um, it's hard to say that you support burning a city down or doing any of that, but imagine how hopeless and voiceless you feel that that is the only way to get attention. And I would argue that it worked because it
Okay.
wasn't until the first riot
Mm-hmm.
that we had Derek Chauvin got arrested and he had third degree
The
manslaughter
day after.
charges.
The day after.
It took the riots to do that. And I've heard some people were friends with that are from Minneapolis that said, I had faith that the investigation would have proved this anyways. You're naive to
Mm.
believe that a police department that just failed its people and killed one of its citizens would be trusted enough to conduct an investigation on its own officers.
Who has a known history of doing that, by the way. Not just the officer, but that police department specifically has a known
We
history
could
of
get
doing
into that. We could get into the fact that he allegedly knew this guy and worked with him, that George Floyd and Derek Chauvin knew each other. That's hard for me to believe that there's no motive when you allegedly know one another. Um, Enough is enough, and the time is now. There have been protests, there have been riots, there has been an uprising. Like I said, it wasn't until the first riots that the third degree murder charges were brought on the officer who murdered George Floyd. It wasn't until the nationwide riots that the other three cops were charged, and the third degree charge was turned into a second degree charge. As much as I hate how disruptive and violent these riots have been, it's hard to say that they didn't bring positive change.
it. Mm-hmm.
Before the
Absolutely.
riots, the only thing I could hang my hat on was, hey, this guy's not on paid administrative leave, like those cops in Buffalo who shoved down an elderly man until he bled out his ears. He was fired. All four of them were fired immediately. That's progress. That's not enough, but that's progress because we didn't see them get, okay, go home, you'll still get paid, and you'll be fine. Um, Someone's asking what's your take on them stating it was manslaughter instead of murder straight away. I think it was intentional. I think it should be murder. I think.
The manslaughter charge was an attempt to get it as manslaughter, which carries a lesser sentence. That
Yep.
one immediately should have been tossed out the window because it wasn't manslaughter is like when you accidentally get in a car accident and kill somebody. That's manslaughter, like vehicular manslaughter. You weren't intentionally setting out to murder somebody. That was a lot different than that video, and I think that's why it was dropped. You know,
I believe
that was
it's.
an accidental.
I believe it's murder.
Yeah.
Like Killer Mike said, this is an assassination.
Yep,
This was a police officer killing a citizen.
on camera, in front of people.
There's protests in the street right now against police brutality, because that's what this is. It's the same thing with Breonna Taylor, who was gunned down in her home because of a botched search warrant, because people didn't take the right steps, because maybe the police department just doesn't fucking care when it comes to certain individuals.
Or certain neighborhoods even. It's probably a zip code and an address. Oh, what? Okay, and we're going to go over there and we're going to have a certain take on how when we go over there.
It's very true. There's protests in the street right now for police violence and police brutality. And how are the police responding? With more violence and more brutality. Shooting rubber bullets and tear gas at innocent, peaceful protesters and turning every peaceful protest into violence. And I know I've seen everything there is to be said on this matter on Facebook. I wish I didn't see half of it, but I've seen people arguing that this isn't the answer, that's not the answer, don't riot, don't protest, don't do this. You can't tell somebody not to protest. You can't tell somebody how to protest. Kaepernick took a knee for an entire fucking football season.
Don't even
And
start on
every
that.
old white man was pissed about it.
Oh man, don't even.
So
Today's
now that
news?
they're in the streets and they're rioting, you're
shit.
going to tell them again, don't do this. Because I heard what Drew Brees said. You best bet I will never support that motherfucker again. I will never look at him in the same light. By the way, the NFL came out and said they were wrong in regards to the Kaepernick protest.
No shit, Sherlock.
That's another story. That's an entire episode worth.
That's
I've seen elderly people shoved to the ground. Not just the old man in Buffalo. I saw another one get shoved for no fucking reason. We've seen police in riot gear go up to people, remove their mask, and mace them in the face. It seems like the police are bullies. They're not keeping the peace. They're not serving. They're not protecting. And that's why we've seen funding in major cities get cut to the police force, where they're cutting hundreds of millions of dollars because the police have failed us. The police have let us down. We're seeing people revolt against oppression, and that's something I will always support. Because nobody should hold you down in a country that is supposed to be built on freedom. There's no place for racism in 2020. There wasn't a place for racism in the 1950s either, but there damn sure isn't when we're fucking this far ahead of all that. The civil rights movement was how long ago, and we're still dealing with this. How many people have you seen on social media that have been saying that, oh, George Floyd was a criminal, he was a drug addict, this guy would have stolen your wallet, and you're going to protest for him? You don't care about human life. There's a million different ways to say that you're racist or you're ignorant. That's just one of them. To say that all lives matter, of course all lives matter. Everybody should matter. The point is that right now, the police have acted for the past how many years? They have acted as if black lives do not matter to them because they're expendable. They treat them as if they're expendable. They don't get the same rights. The church shooter, Dylan Roof, he's put in a bulletproof vest and he's walked all nice and neat. I think he was cuffed in the front too. He was walked all happily to police transportation. No one slammed his head against a cop car. No one beat his ass in a jail cell. No one did anything. And if there's anyone that deserves to get brutalized, it's a man that killed innocent people in a church. No one did anything to him. That's white privilege. If you want to argue with me that white privilege, as a white man, that white privilege doesn't exist, You're lying to yourself.
Huh?
It doesn't make you less of a person to admit that there's privilege. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't keep it and you can't give it away. It's just there because of other people and how they treat you. I can give you an example. I don't like getting this personal, but I'll go ahead and say it.
Oh, I love it.
I got kicked out of. Okay, I didn't get kicked out. My band was going to shit. Not the band with Bryan, a different band. We were going to shit. I was dealing with the breakup. I was fucking miserable. I went bar hopping. I stayed with a friend on a military base, at a Navy base, and I got arrested for being drunk and disorderly, essentially. What I was charged with was federal trespassing because they said that if you're not here with your sponsor, you're not supposed to be here, you're trespassing. Fair enough. I had my day in court, federal court. I go to court. I sit down. You immediately talk with a public defender of sorts. You tell him what happened. He'll listen to you. And he's going to go and talk with the judge and try to reduce your sentence. He's going to fight for you. As long as you have some reason for why you did what you did. He barely asked me about the incident or what happened. Because we were being dumbass drunk people throwing bottles off a balcony at the barracks of a Navy base. Really stupid. We didn't injure anybody, but we caused a big mess and we sure as shit didn't clean it up.
You're being drunk and disorderly.
Yeah, definitely. um, the DA ends up talking to me and asking about my last name, which is strange as shit. You see it on the screen, Musselwhite. I happen to have a second or third cousin who is a famous harmonica and harp and blues player, something people our age wouldn't fucking listen to, so we've never heard of him. But old white guys love this dude. And he asked me about my name. Are you related to Charlie Musselwhite? And I said, yeah, actually I am. And I tell him a couple stories as if we're closer than we are. And I make it seem like, yeah, I'm buddy-buddy with this guy. And he looks at me and he goes, let me see what I could do. And I think
let me see what I can do move.
There's no way that this guy's going to come back and tell me I'm off scot-free. There's no way. Like,
oh man.
He comes back. He tells me I'm fine. That next year on this date that it'll be expunged from my record. You can background check me. It ain't even on there. Tells me everything's fine. Just don't go to a military base, blah, blah, blah. And then asks me more questions about my cousin. He was a fan. He was a fucking fan. But it's still privilege. It's still white privilege because I don't think... I was arrested with Hispanics, and they all got charged with Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. They had to do community service. They had to do all these things that I didn't have to take part in. I was able to get off scot-free and subsequently move away from California and go on with my life.
From a federal offense, mind you. You probably would have been in the worst amount of trouble out of all of them, and you got a federal offense removed. Although it could have just been fanboy out, I think.
I had weed on me when they came to pick us up, and I walked up to a bush. I pulled it out, and I threw it in the bush. And then I immediately walked up to the cops, because you don't want to act like you're ignoring them. And I addressed them head on and told them, they're like, what squadron are you in? And I said, no, we're civilian, and that's where it all went downhill. What I'm saying is I know firsthand that privilege is real.
Yes.
I have no sympathy for the ignorant white folks who love to say that they're immune to privilege, that it doesn't exist, that it doesn't apply to them, because it's not up to you, and it never was. If you can leave the house and get pulled over by the police and not fear for your life, you could fear for your income, you could fear for your money, you could fear for maybe going to jail if you did something wrong, but you don't fear that you're going to be shot and killed. That's the fucking difference. There are universities now that take their college football team and play let's get pulled over and practice getting pulled over and what to say to the cops. I wish that didn't have to be a course, but it is. And it's smart. And I wish it wasn't, but it is. That's what we have to deal with. Something that I learned is that any call to equality to a white person, any call of equality, call wanting equality, feels like something's being taken away from you. Maybe subconsciously, maybe it's on the surface, because maybe you know it, maybe you don't. But it feels like something's getting taken away from you. And I feel that's the biggest struggle that the older crowd and that racist and ignorant people have with racial equality. They don't want to have it because they feel like they're losing something. There's a joke on Family Guy, I believe it's Family Guy. It says, "Don't you hate that we only have most of the power and not all of it?" God, I hate that we only have most of the power and not all of it. That's a lot of white dudes. That's a lot of people's thinking that I can get off scot-free from murdering this person
A
because
lot of Illuminati shit.
I live in a stand your ground state and I own 30 guns, and if the cops come and check them, they're all legal, and you're a criminal, and if you have anything in your background that says you're a criminal, then you're done, and you deserve to get shot on my property. It's fucking stupid. None of that shit matters, man. Any call to equality feels like it's taking away from the white man. And so that's why they buck back. When really you're not giving up anything. Everyone should be able to live as happy and free as that stereotypical white guy that I just painted a picture of.
I think you are spot on. Privilege is a very real thing. I think a shining example of that was the lady that used her, "Hey, I'm gonna call the cops and tell them a black man is harassing me in the park."
Attacking her.
Threatening my life were her words. "Hey, I'm gonna call the police and tell them something that they're gonna respond to swiftly because it's the norm." That is a privilege. The fact that you even thought for a second that you could do that in any world is a privilege. You also mentioned a little bit earlier that you got a lot of your news and your information on Facebook, and you've seen almost every angle from this, right? I mean,
so
not
much
not
the
that you
news, but
trust it all, but you're
people's
getting every
comments,
angle.
people's really hateful reactions to
The
everything.
rage, the angle of the rage, what perspective over here, what perspective over there. We've discussed this, a couple of times. This is very, this is a lot to take in. There's a lot of issues here, but there should be one thing that is very, 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 very like hard lined, and that is no person should be oppressed. No person, based on their color of skin, sex, what have you, should be oppressed in any way, let alone a apparent systematic way to where the livelihood of not only you but generations that come after you are going to suffer and struggle because of racism. Like, let's not deny that this is happening, and the whole like Black Lives Matter encompasses, like, you're not going to get your all lives matter unless the lives that have been just historically dragged through the mud. And I say that because like we have films about how racism used to, like the fact that racism is a topic that's highlighted in so many different areas of life should be the most apparent fact that that's an issue. And the fact that it just so happens to be so heavily targeted on black people puts them at a disadvantage. If you can't recognize that, if you can't recognize that the idea of racism is pretty much racism against black people and how that's been the narrative for hundreds of years, doesn't put them at a disadvantage, then you're ignoring fact. Like, that is fact. And that is what needs to change.
The All Lives Matter statement bugs the living piss out of me because
it's ignorant. People don't understand, and they're just saying it to have an edgy statement in this time, because that's another thing people are
You're
doing.
only
I mean,
saying it.
Off.
Oh,
but
yeah.
People are.
I never said tortilla, by the way.
It's okay. People are just, they want to fucking get a rise out of people. Look at us. We're fucking sitting here sweating about how we're going to talk about this, right? People just want to trigger people, and they want to say things that are offensive or edgy or get a click or get viral or get a statement, and then they want to backtrack and argue. And I mean, again, we're spending 45 minutes on it when that wasn't our intention, but look at people in our sphere, people that we cover and respect and like and love, and all of a sudden they're coming out with batshit just comments, and it's like, okay, man, there's stupidity, there's ignorance, there's button pushing, you're doing this for a reason, and we're just seeing all facets of it, and it's just, everybody shut the fuck up, man. Like, and that's why the listen thing in me is just reverberating so much, because it's like, shut the fuck up and just listen to what's going on around you, because then you would understand what the fuck is going on, and you'd get it, and you'd understand, and you too would shut the fuck up. I've learned to shut the fuck up. Like I haven't posted on social media. I've tried
Don't be a
not.
contrarian right now. Like
Yeah, it's not the
if you have the
fucking
shitty point of
time.
view, like it's gonna
Listen,
cost you your job, your friends. It's not the time to be
your
that guy.
relationships, your mental health. You're talking about being depressed. You're talking about dealing with anxiety and stress. How many people are fucking dealing with that tenfold right now? You know, let alone in the fucking black community, right? Like they suffer from depression and anxiety too. Like, and you don't think that they're feeling that compounded? Like, come on, everybody just needs to fucking pump the brakes, like disengage if you can. I love the idea of fucking disconnecting from social media. Although, and even then, I was getting berated with you shouldn't really disconnect from social media because it's sending the wrong message. And I'm just like, oh my god. And yeah, man, everybody just needs to shut the fuck up and listen. That's all I ask.
Sometimes the statement you make isn't good enough for some people, and that's sad because I think if we weren't to do this show tonight and we just came out and said we support Black Lives Matter, we denounce and condemn police brutality, I
We
feel
get
like
hate.
a lot of people would have came out and said it's not enough, and that's fine. I mean, you're entitled to your own opinion as long as it's not hateful or racist. I can respect it. Um, it's been really, really hard for me to perfectly articulate all my thoughts on everything that's gone on because I've been so angry and so hurt over the ignorance of others. Anyone who knows me knows I hate ignorant people. And I don't have a problem saying the hate word when it comes to that. Ignorance means that you refuse to better yourself. Like, you just don't know any better and you don't fucking want to.
You don't
Okay,
care.
there's a difference in being Takashi 69, uneducated, a product of his environment, leads a life of crime. He's uneducated. I don't know if he's ignorant. Maybe he has tried to get better, but
You can be ignorant
ignorance
to
pisses me
things.
off.
You can be ignorant to things. You know, just because you're ignorant, you're not. It doesn't mean everything's ignorant. You're not ignorant towards everything, but you can have ignorance towards certain things, right? And but there is a difference. Yeah, it's that knowing and not giving a shit, which is like, I mean, disrespectful. It's just like, man, what are you doing? You know, and you're not doing.
You've seen me this week denounce bands like Norma Jean and The Ghost Inside. Bands I consider to be favorites and bands that were always on my playlist on my iPhone. I personally can no longer listen to them in any form or fashion the same way, knowing what they've said and what they've done. There's no excuse at all for having those statements said. There's no excuse for calling your bus driver the N word. There's no excuse to come out and say you don't support Black Lives Matter. And you're going to have to answer to fans when if you're ever
To
lucky
your
to tour
peers,
again.
hopefully, to your
Oh yeah,
peers, to
other
the people
bands.
you tour with,
You
the
think
people
other
that pay
bands are
you.
gonna want to take these motherfuckers on tour when they say ignorant shit like that? Like, I'm a driver. I drive bands on tour. You called a bus driver the N word? Like, how? The quote was, "Now I have to go pay the N word," as if paying the man his earned wage is a struggle or a burden to you. And that's something I can never stand from bands. So that one like hit me personally, that I don't need to be black to be offended by that. Like, you didn't respect that man and that's why you called him that word. And to be a band that's looked at as like woke and supposed to be, I mean, they just went through a horrible tragedy. The Ghost Inside, like, they almost died. Their bus driver died. They lost limbs, they lost fingers, and the whole experience didn't humble you up. I mean, I couldn't be more disappointed in a band like that or someone like Norma Jean. Bands that are supposed to have morals, like, this would be one thing if it came from some stupid party band, but these are bands that, like, not only us, but younger people look up to, and you have failed them. You have fucking failed them. I expect people like Jim Riley from The Ghost Inside, Corey Brandon from Norma Jean, and that piece of shit Lee Runestead that used to be in I Prevail. I expect all of you to apologize and atone for this shit. Atone for your sins. Because this shit is inexcusable. The Ghost Inside could go make 1,000 woke records. It's not going to change the fact that your bass player called your bus driver the N word. Norma Jean could go make 1,000 woke records and go and be a Christian band again and resurrect the entire Solid State 2007 lineup. It's not going to matter at fucking all because you've already come out and you've already put your foot in your mouth and said all the ignorant shit you did. I don't respect these people anymore. I use the word canceled. It has a really bad connotation to it. so I need to choose my words more carefully. So I'm just gonna say bands like The Ghost Inside and Norma Jean are dead to me. Dead to me. Because I don't tolerate that shit. My friends don't tolerate that shit. My family doesn't tolerate that shit. Everyone I've ever toured with and worked with would not tolerate that shit. I mean, how ignorant do you have to be? How secluded in a white bubble do you have to be to think it's okay to call your bus driver the N-word? I assure you, I will be at the Ghost Inside show not to support, not to listen to your fucking hardcore music, but to address Jim Riley to his fucking face. Because what's he gonna say? How fast is he gonna backpedal? How quick is he gonna jump behind a barricade or go in his bus? You're gonna have to answer to people like me, people that have nothing to lose, that will punch you in the fucking face just to get clout with the rest of the touring industry because we don't fucking like you and we don't like what you said. There's You can say sorry 1,000 times. Nothing's going to explain or excuse that shit.
I want to
And
say
I would that's just one case that we know he said it. If you're that comfortable to say it to someone on your bus, like, oh, I gotta go pay my N-word bus driver, then you've probably said it in a lot of forms. And the fucked up part, I probably know who that driver is. And god damn it, none of those people deserve to be called that shit. Um, the only other things I have, I'm fucking pissed. That shit pisses me off. It pisses me
can I
off
add
to
on
be
that
ignorant.
on those two particularly?
Shit on them.
I just so we're clear, we punch people not for clout but for moral foundations, right? So we're not punching people
Moral
for the fan
foundation,
base.
but yeah, I'm gonna love the
We're
fact
gonna
that all
punch
my
someone for
touring buddies
clout.
will hit me up about it. If Warped
Yeah,
Tour was still a thing, best bet I'd do it there.
on stage.
Sorry, Kevin Lyman.
Nobody cares. So the Ghost Inside thing surprised me. I mean, there's no excuse for that. Really, I wasn't the biggest Ghost Inside fan prior to this, so they're not losing anything too crazy from me.
I
But
liked
it's
them.
just it's unexcusable. I liked their story, and they were able to bounce back from the truck accident and all that. But yeah, that's just unexcusable. Clearly, now the Norma Jean thing, and this is what I kind of want to touch on a little bit because I mean Norma Jean is one of my faves, and you know it sucks because I've changed my stance when it comes to artists very very seldom, and I'll give you the first example and probably the most profound example. I was in I believe San Diego in 2012, and across the news little ticker, right, it was like breaking news, find out about like a murder for hire for local San Diego band, yada yada. And I was like, oh shit. And we were about to leave the hotel we were in, and we were like, we're gonna stick around and catch this real quick, see if we know what's up, if we know who it is. Sure enough, it's Tim Labessi from As I Lay Dying, right?
Lamb
He had
pieces.
hired, yeah, Labessi, whatever. He had hired people to kill his fucking wife because he was on roid rage and was just a
She was
fucking
gonna take
lunatic.
the kids and leave them.
Yeah, he was a lunatic and he was gonna hire somebody to kill her. It was a fucking informant or an undercover dude, and he gets arrested. I took a stance, man. I didn't listen to As I Lay Dying for years and years and years and years and years. I listened to a statement, the first two albums that came out. Once he was back, I was like, nah, man. I feel, or the one album, whatever it was, I wasn't about it. Um, you know, I went back. I read an interview that he did recently. I want to say towards the end of 2018, and it was for this most recent album. And I gave it some listens, right? Swear to God, the first time I listened to As Lay Dying, and I guarantee you, had it come on like in a shuffle, I was skipping them. I was done with As Lay Dying. I might have sang like 94 Hours or one of the first songs, maybe once, but I was over 'em. To me, that was bullshit. That's like a move. Like, hey man, yeah, you deserve to get arrested, go to prison for that. It's a fucking weak move. Like,
Fake ass
you were gonna
Christian.
kill. And then that was a big piece, right? There was a lot of that. There was a lot of he got to actually speak on that a lot and why he lost Christianity, lost his faith, and basically the image of the band was just to be a Christian band. You're how you talk about fake Christian. As Lay Dying, probably after Frail Words collapse, was not a Christian band. Maybe Shadows of Security, but once they lost their bassist, no longer a Christian band, and he admitted it. He was like, "Hey, we were just putting a front. None of this matters to me." That alone to me kind of broke me a little bit. I was like, "Hey, man, you have fans. You have fans that look up to you and hang on words that you say and things that you speak from the heart, and people believe that, right? And you're out here saying that it was a front for the kids, like just so the kids buy into it. Come on. I lost a lot of respect in that. And to they'll never regain their spot in my list, and this is just a story of how music like affects me, right? And so, and Nazle Dyne was one of my favorites. So when I heard this from Norma Jean, I had to like immediately dive into it, right? And what it was is he shared a picture that said blah blah blah, and he said that he was referencing the commotion going on social media about the protests and the riots and everything that's going on, and specifically the dissension between like the police and the Black Lives Matter, right? And choosing sides, kind of. And for social media and the Black Lives Matter movement, Blackout Tuesday, it was the like black screen with the white text across it, right? He happened to share a blah 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 one, and I think it gift at some point and went to like another picture, and people fucking went off on him. And his response,
shouts to Stick to Your Guns for being the most true in their sentiments, because I echo everything they said.
yeah, and for the people that called out the Ghost Inside, really, especially when the Ghost Inside is giving proceeds to the NAACP, and they got called out immediately for that. They were
It's
like,
called guilt.
People were like, "Hey, that's real funny that you're doing that when you've been known to." Anyways, back to the Norma Jean thing. His excuse was that he just typed in blah 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 and chose the first gift that popped up and shared it. Hey, in any other,
That's a lie, because the first gift that pops up's never the best one.
No, it might be. It might be. It depends on how descriptive you are. So listen, in any normal place that's not June 2020, I would say, hey man, I get it. You don't like all the commotion that's going on. You want to fucking be quick about it, make a statement. So you chose the first thing you saw. I get it. Probably not the smartest move. But hey, you're forgiven in my book because it's not that big of a deal, right? Now, June fucking 2020, you're trying to have an input in a conversation that is very serious. And yet your due diligence was typing in blah, blah, blah and selecting the first thing you saw. You're not doing your part at that point. You're trying to contribute to a conversation, a very serious conversation, in a public format that is to be taken very seriously when it is being discussed about, especially when it comes from someone of your stature, who's the frontman of a very famous band. When you're not taking the time to be thoughtful in that moment, when the discussion is that serious, you have no excuse. And I'm sorry. And I say that from a journalist perspective. It's what my career is. I say that from a leadership perspective. I'm a manager. I'm a leader. I say that from a fucking content creator, a producer, a host, anybody that has an audience, anybody that has somebody that listens to them. If you're gonna input into a conversation, and it has a magnitude behind it, you fucking got to do your work, man. And that's not doing your work. Selecting the first gift's not doing your work. I'm sorry. You don't get a pass on that. You know, you're definitely not as hard as the hey, you've been known to be a racist, the Ghost Inside, but there's no excuse for laziness when it comes to speaking about a matter like this right now. It's just you can't.
I don't believe his comments at all, and now whenever he ever talks or speaks or tweets anything, I don't believe anything that comes out of Corey Brandon's mouth, because he backpedaled so fucking much with like 12 tweets it didn't make any goddamn sense. I'm seeing a comment, Karina C. Ayala, unfortunately, I don't believe racism will ever end. People raise their children how they were raised. It's sad. So here is my thoughts on that. That's true to a degree. If you're raised in a racist environment, you're taught your whole life that black people are a certain way, or Mexicans or this or whatever racist belief is perpetrated onto you, you're going to grow up and be ignorant. You're not going to know any better. And you're going to think that that's true, because why would you not listen to your parents? Why would you not think their opinion? You know, you would probably believe them. That's what the protests and the riots are for. That's why everyone is urging each other to speak out when somebody says something racist. Because I know in the past, not for me, but I know a lot of other people's approach to it was, oh, he said something racist, I'm not touching that, let's just move on. You need to call those people out. You need to publicly point a finger at them and say, hey, you can't say that. This is why you can't say that. This is why you're wrong. This is why you're on the wrong side of history. Because enough times of doing that, one way or the other, is going to force the change and show people that they're on the wrong side of history. They're on the wrong side of this argument. They are on the losing side. You don't want to be on that side. You don't want to rationalize with a cop murdering an unarmed black man. You don't want to deflect. I'm going to give you a list of do's and don'ts, okay? Hopefully this helps someone, or maybe this lets you know your friends are racist, because I've seen the worst shit on social media in the past 2 weeks. Do not say all lives matter, because of course everyone's life is sacred and it matters, no matter the race, color, gender, orientation, disability, whatever. I don't care if you like all the opposite music as me. Your life matters. I don't want you to die. I don't care if you hate my favorite sports team. I don't want you to die. I may want you to, like, maybe get suspended on Facebook or something. I don't want anyone to die over this shit. Even the guys in the bands that we just said, like, the band is dead, I don't want those guys to die. I really want them to be hit with a dose of logic and reality, and I want them to learn from this. I want them to go away for a little bit, but I don't want them to die. I don't want anyone to die. All lives do matter. But the reason you don't fucking say that right now is because it is only a contrarian opinion and view to Black Lives Matter. You are spitting in the face of BLM supporters when you say that. It's like saying that you are incapable of saying Black Lives Matter because maybe they really don't matter to you. And that's a good deflection in saying all lives matter, because it's such a general, broad statement that how could anyone disagree?
It's almost like you're not taking a stance. It's almost like
exactly, you're not taking a stance. And then someone like me comes up and challenges you. Like 2 nights ago, this happened. And I didn't get into detail because you cannot educate those who do not want to be educated. So don't waste your time. If they don't get the point, they don't get the point. They're not going to get the point for a long time. Let them go. They will fail in their own fucking stupidity and ignorance. Don't come out and tell me that white people are experiencing the same thing that blacks just experienced.
Stop.
Because
Stop.
I talked to you about this the other day. Social media,
I know.
All the police brutality getting televised, getting aired on social media, getting videotaped. Everything is videotaped now. Everything. If there was an overwhelming number of unarmed white people or Hispanics, or who have we not talked about? Asians, Dominicans, anyone. Yeah. If there was an alarming number of these people getting murdered over nothing, we would have seen it. It would have been televised. It would have been on social media. It would have been on Twitter. That's the place where people like you and me post stuff, unedited. Of course, people can interject, but it's where me and you post. It's not TV. It's not where the media is forcing their agenda. It's where you and I post shit. So you would see this. It's a fact that black people are being persecuted in the streets and being senselessly murdered by police. It's a fact. It's not up for debate anymore at all. It is a fact. You don't need to be hit with statistics that you're going to tell me I'm a snowflake and that you don't believe them and that I'm wrong and you're only going to believe this website and that website. It doesn't matter. Facts are facts. We've seen it. It doesn't matter. Ahmaud Arbery, he got murdered by a father and son duo in Georgia, and it took 2 months for charges to be brought up on them. Now we're finding out even more facts. How many times in those 2 months did they try to discredit him, Ahmaud? How many times did they try to discredit Ahmaud and paint a picture as if he's a criminal, suspicious at best, that he deserved to be gunned down? And now we find out, 2 days ago, that he was run over and called the N-word by the same people who shot and killed him. Bullshit. Bullshit. All lives cannot matter.
Or they could be passable.
All lives cannot matter
right.
until Black Lives Matter. I have a whole fucking list. You don't get to tell people how to protest, where to protest, when to protest, the style they do it. That's your privilege showing. You don't get to tell them what to do. You also don't get to tell these people to keep their emotions in check. I know a lot of people are upset about the riots, the looting, the violence. Let me give my insight on looting. Stealing from corporations is an entirely different story than stealing from a small business. I'm not going to tell you it's okay and it's something I encourage, but I've stolen from corporations. I stole from Walmart, I stole from Target, and I didn't give a fuck about it, and I still don't because they're a corporation and they can fucking get over it. When you steal from a mom and pop store, they're going to feel the effects of it a lot harder. A lot harder. Some businesses are never going to be able to reopen because of COVID or the protests or riots burned down their business, and it sucks. But I also know in 1977, during the New York blackouts, it was the reallocation of goods, as they called it, that made the city and each borough, each neighborhood that had one DJ go from having 20 DJs overnight because they would have never been able to afford that equipment. And you know goddamn well they were so fortunate to have it because they learned what it was and how to make beats. And that's how hip hop was born. That's how revolutions are started. What does Star Wars tell us? Revolutions are built on hope. If you
Uh,
have a little bit of hope, you can have a revolution. So don't come at me with looting is wrong, rioting is wrong. Of course it's fucking wrong. But you know what else is wrong? Police brutality, killing unarmed innocent black people. It's fucking stupid. I've heard the argument so many times. You can't tell them to keep their emotions in check when they're out protesting. You can't tell them to abide by police when they don't even give commands and the police start firing tear gas or start hitting you with rubber bullets. This is the most disgusting shit I've seen the cops do. Shoot people with rubber bullets and crack the, you know how many eyes have been lost in the protests?
oh,
It's
several.
insane.
Yeah.
I've seen so many people on social media that didn't have one fucking word to say about George Floyd and his murder. And I want to emphasize the word murder. Not accidental killing, not death. He was murdered by Derek Chauvin, a Minneapolis police officer. They don't give a fuck about what happened to him. They don't give a fuck about George Floyd. They don't care about the injustice. They didn't care that the cop was only fired and not brought up on charges initially. What they did care about, what they felt passionate enough to make 5 fucking Facebook posts, was about the riots and how burning down your city's wrong. How can that be wrong? But you didn't care about George Floyd's life. So you're going to tell me you value property over life. Is it because he's black? Is it because he was suspected of a crime? Is it because you don't actually care about individuals' lives, but now that you have something to complain about as a white man, you're going to step up and bitch about buildings getting burned? Because I'll tell you right now, no one gives a fuck that AutoZone burned down. No one. Maybe a couple guys who work at AutoZone that have to travel like 20, 30 minutes away further to go to work. But no one in that city is going to give a fuck that the AutoZone burned down when George Floyd was murdered in the streets, thrown on a gurney. No one cared about giving him CPR. They fucking killed him. Another black man dead at the hands of the cops. No one cared. So don't tell me that rioting is wrong. Don't tell me looting is wrong because we already fucking know and we either agree or we ignore it and we do it anyways.
Is it cool if I add to that real quick? So my experience with or my opinion on looting and rioting, I do think that the protests are necessary, and I'll explain why real quick. And the looting and rioting, my comment on that is yes, it's stupid. And like you said, the corporation message, that gets tossed around a lot during rioting, and I think that's when rioting is like appropriated, right? I think that's when it's like, oh hey, as long as the message matches the actual protests and the violence, then it kind of aligns. And the whole Target, hey, Amazon, did you see that on fire today? You think that was fucking arson or what? The
I
distribution center in San
honestly,
Bernardino?
I didn't even think about arson. I just
Dang.
thought the whole building went up in smoke, so it had to
Yes,
be
sir.
something
I
like
think
pretty
someone did that.
critical.
I think someone did that shit. Anyways, so
The whole
anyway,
building burned to the
met
ground. I think it was in
met
Redlands.
yeah, it was the Redlands distribution center right by our house. We're right by where we're from. Shout out 760. What's up? So the basically the rioting is, it has to align with the message of the protest, right? And the biggest and probably best example of that is the rioting after Martin Luther King was assassinated. Like after his assassination, there was fucking rioting and protests, right? And then it took
And
like
he protested peacefully. Keep
Yeah.
that in mind.
Yeah. And so after his assassination, which was in April, whenever, yeah, April, I think 2, 3, 4, 5 months later, I don't have it in front of me, but within a couple of months, and some very heavy like protesting and riots, the Civil Rights Act. And so I feel like that was drafted up, very, very short in time after his assassination. And that's just proof in the pudding that protesting is there for a reason, right? And you have a lot of people that are out here, especially military people, the people that, are there to defend the Constitution and defend our rights, right? They're standing up for the protest because they're like, hey, that is the right. That is the right of these people to go out there and be heard, and potentially the only way that they're going to be listened to. And the protests have a turning point when you start seeing the precincts go up, right? They backed the police out of the precinct non-violently, right? I mean, there was pressure and they left, but they didn't harm any police in the wake of that. They didn't go in there shooting or guns a-blazing. They went in there and they protested, they fled, and they set the precinct on fire. That's a fucking message. The courthouse in Nashville, that's a fucking message. There's messages that are being listened to right now, and that's what's getting the point across. And that's the kind of stuff that needs to happen in these protests to get the point across. When you're going out, like here in Austin, Texas, on Monday, and they broke into Private Stock, which is a black-owned business, you're not doing anything for yourself. You're destroying the cause at that point. You're being counterproductive. And I get the whole rioters and plants and all that. That's a different conversation. But the point is, the protests serve as like the vessel for the message, and sometimes you got to translate that message in different languages, and you got to go to the setting shit on fire and go into the spray painting, right? But as long as they coincide, I think you're good. When you start taking it out on the ones that are probably supporting the cause more than anything, because they are a small business. They are the ones that rely on the communities to thrive, and you're going out there and destroying them. You're fucking up. It's just my opinion.
I appreciate that. Good, good notes to have. I was going to talk about Colin Kaepernick for a minute because a lot of people were talking about. There was a meme going around talking about Martin Luther King had peaceful protests and y'all still shot him. The same goes for Colin Kaepernick. Kaepernick took a knee under the advice of a Green Beret soldier who told him that simply sitting down during the national anthem wasn't enough. That was disrespectful to the flag. But if he took a knee, that would be a different story. And when Kaepernick started doing this, I'll be the first to tell you, I didn't like it. I didn't understand it mainly, but I didn't at the time agree with it because I thought, what does this do? Well, what I learned is that it did a lot of things because it brought a lot of fucking attention to the league and to him specifically, so much so that he got blackballed out of a job. And it wasn't until today that the NFL admitted that they had a problem and that they handled it wrong. Kaepernick took a knee for police brutality because he was sick of what he was seeing, and everyone had a problem with it. Ratings declined, people stopped watching football games, people were burning his jerseys. Y'all had a problem with Kaepernick taking a knee. So no shit you have a problem when the Target gets looted and burned to the ground. It's not a fucking surprise. That's why you can't tell someone how to protest, because you don't like the peaceful protest when he takes a knee because it brings so much attention. Ignorant and racist people prefer the protest to just go away. They look at protests, I'll give you one word they love to call them: snowflakes. The word Trump made famous. They love to call them snowflakes.
Shit.
It is your American God-given right to protest. So do it when you feel that you're being treated unfairly and that there are injustices. And Kaepernick did that, and people got pissed. And now, look, nothing's changed. It's gotten worse, and now the police are acting up. It's fucked up. Everything's fucked up right now. I support Kaepernick. I really like him. I think that people are really wrong for judging him and disliking him. I think the NFL, as much as I'm a football fan and I'll watch it to the day I die, the NFL as an organization, and Roger Goodell specifically, they failed their fans and their customers, because this entire national anthem thing, they didn't always do this. They started doing this when the US government started giving a $12 million donation annually to the NFL in order to boost recruiting statistics. They wanted to get in bed with the NFL so that they looked cooler and people would join the Army, join the Marines, join the Air Force because they felt patriotism every time they saw an NFL game. It's bullshit. It's called forced patriotism. Kaepernick took a knee, y'all were pissed. But no one's pissed that the NFL didn't want to honor its country until a $12 million donation. I look at a sport like NASCAR that has stuck to tradition, that always starts every race with the prayer, controversial, and the national anthem. Every single race since the beginning of time. Not because of donations, not because of investments, but because of what they stand for. They're one of the most American sports there is. That's why they returned quicker than all the other sports during this corona outbreak. Support Kaepernick, support peaceful protests, try to keep them peaceful. Don't go out there and destroy property. Don't go looting. I know it's cool to go and get some Supreme gear from that boutique shop, but trust me, like, demo doesn't exist anymore. You're not looting a mall. You're probably hurting a black business or an independently owned business when you go and loot that shit. I mean, I want Supreme as the next guy, but let's take it easy. I've lost friends over this debate. It shouldn't even be a debate of racial equality. It should just be a mass agreement. But I've literally lost friends because they want to argue about the riots and not the issue at hand. They want to argue about, oh, he was on drugs. It doesn't fucking matter. You're going to tell me that because this guy's life went off the rails and he had allegedly fentanyl, methamphetamine in his system, that he had coronavirus, that he might have died anyways, that he might have been a drug addict, that he... I've heard people say that George Floyd would have stole my wallet, and why would I protest for him? Because he was a human fucking being. That's why.
Yep, it doesn't deserve to die that way.
Who deserves to die that way? I mean, that's what I'm saying with the Dylan Roof comparisons. If we're not going to treat people that literally deserve to die, like Dylan Roof, that walked into a church and sprayed it up and killed like 8 people, why kill these other folks?
Sending mixed messages, man. You can't, you can't be fucking treating one like one, and you gotta have something there.
We're taking like literal white criminals that have mass murderers and we're treating them with respect, but we can't treat the black guy in the street that used a fake $20 bill, whether knowingly or unknowingly. We can't treat him with fairness. We can't be objective to that. Like, you have to put your knee on his neck and kill him. I'm emotional over this shit. I'm angry over this shit.
I hate it, man. I hate it.
I'm not going to be the most
ruined my
politically
whole week.
correct and tell you that these people, justice isn't enough. Like, these cops, they all deserve to be tried and sentenced. They need jail time. But Derek Chauvin, the one that killed him, needs to go away for life because he murdered a man. Cold blood, murdered a man.
Facts.
This is going to sound terrible. I don't know his name.
No.
So I didn't want to look these fuckers up. The Asian cop that stood there as this was all happening, he looked scared as shit. When George Floyd was getting murdered,
yeah.
the Asian cop that kept looking at the camera, scared as all get out. Never once tried to get his partner off that guy. Never once tried to get him off of George Floyd.
I have a controversial take on that whole situation. You want to hear it? A little hot take here. Why didn't someone fucking rush the cop? All it would have taken...
Because they're going to get killed. A citizen?
Hey, I get it. But if we're all being the, hey, we're watching somebody die guy, right?
A citizen bum rush a cop.
Any movement that would have gotten the cop to lift his... Well, listen. Any movement, not even rush the cop. Any movement of, like, standing in front with the camera and getting closer to the cop and caused him to lift his knee up, homeboy would have been able to get a breath. That's all I'm saying, man. Any movement off of him would have caused George to be able to at least breathe or do something, right? Maybe move. And then, yeah, hey, you get tackled, now you're arrested. But everybody just stood there and watched it, which in a way in itself is a little disturbing. But I get it. At least it was documented, and at least we're able to see exactly how it went down, and there's no questions or ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? But, I mean, I sit and I wonder, hey, if I'm watching this happen to somebody, at what risk will am I willing to go out of my way to help somebody, you know? And I feel like, I mean, what do we do? What do we just stand by and now we just start watching people die left and right? Because you know, fucking damn well, any traffic stop within the next like foreseeable future is going to be recorded. Any cop that is pulling over anybody is going to have a camera pulled out on them because that's just the norm right now. And so, you know, there's the bystander effect is real and people sit by and watch things happen and don't react. And I just wonder what it would have taken for him to have gotten off the guy. You know, a sudden movement from somebody, maybe another cop, maybe one of the cops going, "Hey man, can we maybe put him on the hood? Can we maybe like remove this situation since people are filming us and we have jobs to keep over here? Can we maybe do something?" What would it have taken for somebody to get the cop to move? Is all I'm wondering.
I'll put it to you like this: you make a good point. That somebody should have like rushed the cop. Yeah, I've seen people too posting. If I'm being if I'm being killed by the cops, don't just film it. Help me. Um, I'll tell you right now, and I'll say this with all certainty. I wish I had a better outlook. If somebody bum rushed either one of those cops,
Oh
they're
yeah,
getting tased, they're getting shot, they're getting murdered, they're getting arrested. But that knee is going back to the neck of George Floyd because Derek Chauvin meant to kill him. He had every
mm,
intention in the world how fucking long do you need to keep your knee there? And the way he had his hands in his pockets, yeah, it was suspicious. I also think it was for extra leverage. Like
yep,
maybe he's pushing his knee
mm-hmm.
further into his neck. You could have put him in 1,000 different positions to subdue him because he had been sub fucking dude. At that point, it's about murder.
Thank you. He was already in fucking handcuffs. What the fuck? Like, what else
Yeah,
do you
and
need? You could
there's a
trip him
lot of
as he's running. What the fuck do you need? Like,
there's a lot of people making that argument that like, hey, he was resisting arrest. Okay, I saw a couple movements from him and that shit quickly stopped and I saw him lose consciousness a couple times. So you're gonna tell me that he needed a knee in the back of his neck? No, you just don't care about black people. No one's gonna come out and say that. That's what you need to learn about your friends. They're not gonna come out clear as day and say the N word. They're not going to say that black lives don't matter to them. They're going to do it in other ways. They're going the shit we told you about. They're going to complain about Colin Kaepernick. They're going to complain about the property damage. They're not going to make any mention of George Floyd. I've lost real life friends over this debate. I am currently on a 30-day Facebook ban because I told someone who had a racist opinion that made me want to throw up. I told them to get shot because I couldn't keep my emotions in check. Now I'm on a 30-day ban and it affects my
banned.
fucking
You're
business.
banned. You're banned.
I have to give Bryan more rights and more approval over the fucking site because
Hey,
I
yep.
can't handle the Facebook. I can't do anything on it for the next, what, 29 days because I told a racist piece of shit to get shot. Even though he deserved to get shot, he's a fucking asshole. I'm still in the wrong. I didn't keep my emotions in check. The same thing when when I tweeted out stupid shit like "kill all racists." Doesn't make anything better. My emotions are running wild. It's no excuse. I deleted that shit. I don't want people to think of me as like someone that calls for the head of another. Um, I mean, I think you should lose your job if you're going to be a racist piece of shit. You should definitely lose your job, but you don't need to get shot and die. That's a little too far. Um,
Hey, we all say things in the heat of the moment, man. But I think that goes to show, there's a lot of things right now that are going on that are causing people to respond, use their fight or flight response, right? Using that heat of the moment, that reaction. And I think that's when people do need to kind of analyze, even if you do react, like if you're not having a little bit of self-awareness, and I think that's what's getting a lot of people into problems right now is not being self-aware of what's going of themselves in these situations and in these circumstances and what's going on, around them. And so when you're not self-aware, you're missing yourself within the interactions and you're a component within these interactions and then you're fucked if there's no self-awareness. So it's for you to say that and for you to say, yo, I was heated and I had some anger and we're talking about how it's affecting us and our emotions and our our attitudes. And hey man, sometimes we got to be upset, sometimes we got to be angry, and it's okay to express that. I think as long as on the back end you are reflecting a little bit. And you know again, there's a lot of that going on right now, so it's crazy.
we were gonna do CD reviews, but we're that's just not
Hey
going to be
man, nope,
appropriate right
it's
now,
okay.
so
It's
we're
all
not
right.
going to do it.
We should
If you
save them
were,
for a more upbeat episode. Something, we got some good music to cover. We do have some
we
good
will.
music.
We'll be
People
covering
did.
albums next week, and we will not be covering The Ghost Inside. First of all, there's no way to give them a unbiased opinion now, knowing what I know about them. I don't want to give them any shine or any clout. Their bass player needs to fucking answer up for all the bullshit he said. Um, and that's saying a lot given what they've been through. I mean, dude, they almost died, and like this is it's just fucking stupid that this shit came out. No CD reviews this week, no Takashi news this week, no anything but Black Lives Matter, because this is what's going on. This is what's happening right now in the streets, in the world, in our country. This affects our country the most. I'm glad to see it getting support in places like the UK and Germany, but this shit is happening right here in your town. So be a part of the change. Don't be on the wrong side of history. Next week, we are going to have a really fucking awesome, brutal show for you. We are coming at you with a special time. So if you're used to seeing us at 10 p.m., when you have to like make sure your parents go to bed before you tune in, or you have to like, start smoking at 10 p.m., we're going to be live next week, 5 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. And for those in the UK, 1 a.m. we will be on, because we are going to have the UK Slam Metal Kings, the boys from Manchester, Ingested, are going to be our guests. I am stoked on this. Our first international guest. They have a super sick album coming out. You need to know who Ingested is if you are a fan of metal. If you like shit that's like, oh, it's cool, but it needs to be a little more slammy, bro. This is the episode for you. Their vocalist, Jason Evans, will be joining us, so I am super excited for that. In the meantime, you can rate, review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, unsubscribe again, and then resubscribe to all of our shit on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher. We have a super sweet YouTube channel where you can catch all our live streams at unedited. All the stuff on the YouTube is fully unedited. The stuff you will find on the podcast platforms will be edited for time, but the best content will always be available. Check us out on social media. We are always available at iHateTheScene on Instagram and TikTok. Because of that stupid son of a bitch that stole my name on Twitter, we are at iHateTheScene. The A in hate is an 8.
Can we figure out who this fool is so we
Fuck
can
that
just be
guy,
like,
okay?
so we can be like, fuck you, Mark Tenorman.
Yeah, now's not the time to go
And because of
threaten
that
people.
stupid ass Mark Tenorman, we can't have the good handle.
And he doesn't even use his account. That's what fucking pisses me off the most. Fuck that guy. Bryan, where can they find you? 'Cause you know they
Bryan.
won't find me on Facebook because I'm banned.
If you need to get in touch with Matt via Facebook, you can just go ahead and send me all the messages, and I'll make sure to relay them to him in an orderly fashion.
won't be
You can
orderly.
you can find me at of Bryan of Death on Instagram, on Twitter, thecommonchaos.net for the podcast Common Chaos. And hey man, I would really like to have you on so we can discuss this further, because I feel like there is a time for us to get serious, and I think they do need to see vulnerable Bryan and vulnerable Matt.
Well,
We
you
get
just
a
want me to
couple other people
cry
in
for
here.
20 minutes on your fucking podcast?
Hey,
Yeah,
man.
you wish.
Hey, tears get clicks, bro. Just kidding. All right, I gotta go. I mean, I don't really have to go. We're signing off. I'll meet you backstage.
Love you.
Love you. Bye.
Take care of yourselves.
Hey, be nice.
What does Jerry Springer say? Take care of one another?
Take care of one another. I like
Yeah,
to
do that.
fucking love yourself. Love somebody else.
Get in the pit and try to love someone.
Who said that?
Kid Rock.
That's
Great
right. Get in the pit and try to love someone.
I'm pretty sure that was the edited version, and he actually said, get in the pit and try to fuck someone.
Did he really?
R.I.P. Joey C.